I know this is probably not the most joyous TGIF we have had. Let's face it, most people here are pretty upset and pretty sad for because of the election. But anyway, on a more serious note, myself as an immigrant and a refugee, I certainly find this election deeply offensive, and I know many of you do too. And I think it's a very stressful time, and it conflicts with many of our values. I think it's a good time to reflect on that, and we're going to hopefully share some thoughts today. I guess there are two dominant reasons to be upset. One is because so many people apparently don't share many of the values that we have.
So look, it was a shock to all of us, the results of the election. It was a fair and democratic process, and we honor that. But at the same time, it showed an incredible level of division among Americans, and that's something that gives us pause and focuses on how did we misunderstand that. This is not the first sign we've seen of this rising tide of nationalism, populism, and concern. There are drivers of globalization and immigration which have sparked movement. All politics is local, goes the old phrase. And if you're in Pennsylvania or Birmingham, you may not care that somebody in Delhi is getting a new job or that somebody in Jakarta is getting better health care. You care about what's happened to you and your family. And you're seeing this sense of stagnation, that you're not better off than your parents, and you're afraid that your kids might not be better off than you are. And what's the path forward? And the forces out there seem well beyond you. Globalization, immigration, trade, whatever else, and you're afraid and you're trying to look for answers. And that fear, I think, not just in the United States, but around the world, is what's fueling concerns, xenophobia, hatred, and a desire for answers that may or may not be there. It's feeling a distrust of experts and disregard of traditional institutions. And we're trying to figure out, how do we respond to that? What are the next steps for us before the world comes into this environment of tribalism that's self-destructive on the long term? There are cycles of these things that often can last 5, 10 years before people feel as though that they've had a chance to vent that anger. And yet, we do think that history is on our side in a profound and an important way. Martin Luther King made famous a line that the moral arc of history is long, but it bends toward justice. I would say that the moral arc of history is long, but it bends toward progress. And out of progress comes rising living standards and better health care, and ultimately the ability to transcend those forces of tribalism and, yes, reach toward
8:30 p.m. on Tuesday night, I was at home with friends and family watching the election returns. And as we started to see the direction of the voting, I reached out to someone close to me who was at the Javits Center where the big celebration was supposed to occur in New York City, somebody who'd been working on the campaign. And I just sent him a note and said, are you okay? It looks like it's going the wrong way. And I got back a very sad, short text that read, "People are leaving, staff is crying, we're gonna lose." That was the first moment I really felt like we were gonna lose. And it was this massive kick in the gut that we were gonna lose. And it was really painful. And the thing that hit me, and I've talked about it here before, we all have an obligation to fight for what's right and to never stop fighting for what's right. And that's one of the many things that I think makes this company so beautiful. Our values are strong, we will fight to protect them, and we will use the great strength and resources and reach we have to continue to advance really important values. So yesterday, Eileen and I had a town hall for some of our orgs, and I suggested that what we all need right now is a hug. So everybody, if you could turn around or go to the person next to you and do a hug. It works. Woo! Yes!
The second question is around internal mobility. Can I move to Canada? Now, one could guesstimate that at least 50% of Americans are interested in moving to Canada right now. And that might mean maybe at least 50% of Googlers might be interested in moving to Canada. Toronto and Waterloo can't handle us all, I'm afraid. But look, we move people at Google all the time. I just moved here to California 6-7 weeks ago. We moved 8,900 people in the last 12 months. We expect we'll be moving well more than 10,000 next year. So we care about your talent development and mobility independent of this election. So for those of you interested, pay attention. We do move people around. And then finally on diversity and inclusion, I think it's fairly obvious that Google leans largely liberal and democratic, but I do want to be clear that diversity also means diversity of opinion and political persuasion, and we value and welcome perspectives from all sides of the political spectrum. So I have heard from some conservative Googlers lately in the past few days that they haven't felt entirely comfortable revealing who they are when these conversations come up at work.
Next question, yes.
Yeah, so a lot of Googlers are maxing out on their charitable giving contributions, contributing to organizations such as ACLU and Equal Justice Initiative following this election. Can we increase the gift match caps or designate certain civil justice liberties organizations as crisis response special donations that are matched without?
It's a good suggestion. I don't know that maybe we'll have to chat about it a little bit. What's today's match? 612? I can't remember.
It's $6,000.
I would. Here, I'll throw out my theory here. I think everybody's presuming that some of these folks left behind are, specifically the people who voted for Trump. I don't think the data quite supports that. I mean, I know there's the kind of geographic, roughly speaking, spread, but in fact, Hillary won the low-income vote. In fact, people under $100,000 supported Hillary and over $100,000 supported Trump. I actually looked at the data, fairly carefully, and I think the biggest relationship was whether people had really routine jobs in an area, and that correlated highly with Trump's support versus having non-routine jobs. And there's actually a lot of historical precedent for boredom being a huge factor in vote choice, and actually in building extremism. In fact, we've had a lot of work on Jigsaw on extremism that shows high correlation to simple boredom. Also, when people vote, and I know people who voted for Trump, and people who abstained, and people who voted for Johnson, and so forth, like, voting is not a rational act. Audience question, yes?
One of the main messages I've gotten from all of you today is that this election and others like it around the world are a hiccup in history's arc towards progress. But what makes you so sure about that? I mean, is this a relatively new arc, or is this the same arc that has included 2 world wars?
Since it's my metaphor, I'll take it up. There are no guarantees, right? And there are, hiccup is a kind word. History is not a linear pattern. We do everything we can to keep it moving in a good direction. If you look over the broad reach of any 20, 50, 100-year period, there's less death, life expectancy goes up, people are doing better, more prosperous. The arc does go like this exponentially in terms of standards of living around the world. Yes, it's not completely smooth, it goes up and down, and I think history teaches us that there are periods of populism, of nationalism that rise up, and that's all the reason we need to be in the arena, That's why we have to work so hard to make sure it doesn't turn into a world war or something catastrophic, but instead is a blip, is a hiccup.
Or, sorry, I'll take one at each mic. Sorry, sir, maybe.
Speaking to white men, there's an opportunity for you right now to understand your privilege in the society. Take the opportunity to go through the bias-busting training, read about privilege, read about the real history of oppression in our country, and tomorrow night, watch 13th, the movie that is here. If you can't watch it here, watch it on Netflix. Discuss the issues you are passionate about during Thanksgiving dinner, and don't back down and laugh it off when you hear the voice of oppression speak through metaphors, and I promise to do this.